And I want to share today about the medicine that changed my life. I want to share my 7-year update with low-dose naltrexone. Hello everybody, Melissa from Melissa vs. Fibromyalgia here, though that name does not feel like it makes sense anymore. I have had chronic illnesses for a long time, and it's been a long winding journey, but to cut it all short, I have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, interstitial cystitis, POTS, and endometriosis, for which I had hysterectomy and excision surgery for. And I want to share today about the medicine that changed my life. I want to share my 7-year update with low-dose naltrexone. So I'll preface this by saying that I have had symptoms since I was like 14 years old, and very little help until I was 30. And that all came from me. I had to do the research and the trial and all that stuff. The first thing I found was yoga nidra meditation, which really helped. But the next major thing that really helped was low-dose naltrexone. I found out about it online from the patient community. I researched it. I took it to my doctor, and he had heard of it and had used it before without much success, but he was willing, because of the low side effect profile, to give it a go. And I will be forever grateful for that. So low-dose naltrexone is an opioid antagonist. So it works differently in the body at lower doses than when taken at the high dose. So at high doses, it's for opioid addiction and alcohol addiction. At lower doses, it seems to help the immune system. So they started using it, I think, in like the 80s for people with AIDS, and it seemed to help them. And now, like, we've got a whole heap of research through the LDN Research Trust, kind of compiling it together, and they do a lot of like webinars, and they have a lot of information now. And we have a lot of research for fibro and CFS, which we'll talk about. But at low doses, it seems to help. We don't know the exact mechanisms yet, but low-dose naltrexone is anything from kind of 0.25 milligrams to 6 or 8 milligrams. It really varies. But what it is said to do is temporarily block the opioid receptors in your brain, which makes your body create more endorphins. Which has excellent flow-on effects. So it works primarily in the brain, and they believe that it helps neuroinflammation, which is like a connecting feature of the conditions that it helps. So it helps fibromyalgia, low-dose naltrexone, multiple sclerosis, endometriosis, lots of ones like that. And the research studies kind of focus on pain, but sleep and fatigue can be improved on it. And also more research is kind of talking about the cognitive benefits. So the benefits on brain fog, which is of course a big deal with fibro and CFS. The thing that I wish that everyone would know about low-dose naltrexone is that the side effects are generally minimal and transient, meaning they don't last long. They can be insomnia, headache, or vivid dreams. And again, they can be very short-lived. And if it's insomnia, then you can mitigate it by changing dosing to the morning. The LDN doesn't cause withdrawals, which is obviously a wonderful feature. If you know any other medicines for fibromyalgia, then you would know that is a big risk for a lot of the medicines we're given. So there is no like suffering from going off it, except for the fact that it is no longer helping you. So whatever symptoms you had just come back. I have gone off it a few times. I went off it for my 3rd and 4th labors, so before, when I was expecting the babies, and for my surgery last year, and there was no ill effect except for being off it and not having the relief that it gives me. The tricky thing is that it can take some time to see benefit. So it can take a few months, and the other tricky thing is that it doesn't seem to be stable which dose works. So research studies usually throw people straight on 4.5 milligrams and do it for 4 to 8 weeks. Whereas in the real world, we've seen that generally you start low and you move up slowly. And there's no real kind of scientific rule for it. Some people start with 1.5 milligrams and then kind of have the 1.5 milligram capsule and then add 1 capsule once a week or whatever, until they find a dose that seems to be their maximum. So my maximum dose is actually 4 milligrams. I've actually never been able to go above that. And that's, I think, a little bit of a trick to it. But I would also say, based on my experience, based on what I've seen other patients say, and based on some doctors who use it in their practice, give it at least 3 months. But in my 4-year update, I broke down my benefits and I talked about sleep, pain, fatigue, and the emotional. And so after 7 years, what can I say about this? Good things still. And I think there's even more to it. So let's talk about sleep. Starting LDN was the first time I ever started to get any deep sleep or stay asleep for more than a few hours at a time. Prior to LDN, my sleep was very choppy. It took me a long time to get to sleep. I'd wake up like every hour, and I would spend a long time in the middle of the night awake and just in pain, but too tired to move. It was awful. And LDN helped that. So, you know, like for someone who's had insomnia for 20 years, that's a big deal. And then when I added quetiapine a bit later on, which also helped me to fall asleep more quickly and helped me to stay asleep a bit better, it really, really did help. So that is wonderful. Pain, oh my goodness. So in my 4-year update, I said about how the pain had taken my neck pain down. And at the time I was experiencing kind of 3 to 4 out of 10 of pain levels, and that was really excellent for me, and I was very happy about that. I also experienced a lot of morning stiffness. So through the night, your body would get stiffer and stiffer as you were lying down, and then in the morning it would be very hard to get moving and take some time. And that reduced on the LDN. Now, it's tricky because I've been through so much in the last few years. So nothing is stayed stable. You know, other conditions wax and wane and that kind of thing, and we've learned a lot. But it does help with pain. Quite a lot. Fatigue, obviously, it helps with fatigue. I mean, if it helps you sleep and it helps reduce pain, it's going to help with fatigue. I still have to be very mindful of my limits and my pacing, but it helps. And the other thing that it helps with is like that emotional thing. So can you imagine years of living with really bad pain and fatigue levels, never sleeping, never meeting understanding from a medical professional, and having nothing to help? And then having something now that helps. Like, it's incredible. Like, not spending hours awake alone in loads of pain in the middle of the night is a big deal. It's a big deal. And having things that help is just massive. So knowing I've got my low-dose naltrexone and my yoga nidra meditation, those two particularly together really help. So the emotional kind of benefit is huge. After 7 years, I feel confident that it's going to keep working, which is wonderful. But I also know it's not standalone and that things change. So there have been times where I've titrated my dose up and down and played with things just out of curiosity, or when things were going on and I wanted to know, you know, if the LDN was still working, and it is still working. So I'm really thankful for that. I know there are some people who it has helped and then it stops helping. And I don't know the reason for that. But for me, it has helped. But things have changed a lot in the past 3 years. So we found out that not everything I experience is fibromyalgia, shock horror. I have chronic fatigue syndrome, interstitial cystitis, orthostatic intolerance, or POTS. We haven't quite diagnosed that yet. We also found out that my severe periods were endometriosis. And so in 2023, I had a hysterectomy and endometriosis excision surgery. For a little while, I was a bit disappointed that those things were able to get worse while I was on LDN, because there are people who take LDN for POTS and endometriosis. So it must have been really bad if it was able to kind of override, you know, what is essentially a treatment for a lot of people for these things. Since my surgery, the period pain is obviously gone. Hallelujah. And much of my abdominal pain is gone, which is amazing. But I still have lots of things going on. Since my surgery, the orthostatic intolerance / POTS is worse, and the heat intolerance is worse. So that means this summer my fatigue is higher again, and we're having a heat wave right now, and I'm really not dealing with it very well at all. So I share this to highlight that LDN is not a magical fix, and things have not been sunshine and rainbows. But despite all of that, it is the thing that has helped the most. So I want to present a balanced kind of account of exactly what it's done for me and what's been going on. So I actually did go off it for a week or two a couple of years ago, because I thought maybe like it wasn't working anymore because, you know, these conditions that I have were worsening somehow and LDN was meant to help. But within a couple of weeks, I felt exactly how bad it was before, like not sleeping, morning stiffness, increased pain, lethargy, fatigue. I was basically miserable. And I remembered, or had a snapshot into what it was like before, panicked, went back on LDN, and it was okay. So I wouldn't be without it. And there has been a lot of research in the last few years. And Dr. Jared Younger in 2013 had a small but really positive study. And that is kind of what started it off and what made me try it. But since then, the results have been quite mixed. And I can see in a lot of them why. They put patients straight on 4.5 milligrams and they do it for about 4 weeks. Some patients will never get to 4.5 milligrams, and many patients titrate up. Like a lot of the people I've seen and myself titrate up slowly, and it takes longer than 4 weeks. So I just write those research papers off completely. However, a more recent piece of research just decided that it's not clinically significant overall. However, that they said that there were a few patients that it helped a lot, as in like 50% reduction in pain. The authors of that study advised that people for whom LDN is working should stay on it, but that they shouldn't put new patients on it. And I disagree. I really disagree with that. As a patient advocate and a person who's benefited from it enormously, and given the low side effect profile, the ease of trying it, the accessibility, I think others should get to try it. I really do. I don't think it should be held back. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, POTS, long COVID, endometriosis, they're very similar syndromes, but every patient is different, like how they experience each one and which ones they have that go together. And what helps one doesn't necessarily help another. But why should some patients be denied something that could give them as much as 50% decrease in symptoms just because it doesn't help everyone? Like, I just think it's worth the try, especially if you can mitigate the side effects, like reduce dosing, slowly titrate up, take morning dosing if the insomnia is a problem. But like when you compare those things, you know, like those potential side effects with the potential side effects of every other medication we have ever been offered, it always comes out so much better off, right? And people have been using it since the 80s. We have long studies of people using it. And I mean, I look at any other medicine I've ever been offered, and like, not only has the LDN helped me so much more than anything, it, like, the side effects are nothing, right? And the thing I like about it is that it appears to help your body do something it would naturally do anyway. It's kind of more natural in that sense. So I really would encourage anyone who is considering trying it to take some research to their doctor. I've got a few videos, I've got a few blog posts with research. I also have an ebook that you can purchase and download if you want it all together. Research sheets, information, links to more research, a data sheet, all that kind of thing. But there is information there, and I think you should take it to your doctor and request a trial using all this information. So start low and go slow, and give it at least 3 months. Make sure though that you're not on anything that would interact, obviously. Your doctor should be checking that before they prescribe anything. If you take opioids, you can't take it. There are protocols for ultra-low dose naltrexone, but it feels safer to me not to take it, especially given the reaction I had after my surgery. I wasn't off LDN long enough, and so the opioid medicine did not work. So I woke up from surgery with no pain relief and was in a lot of pain. We managed to fix it, but I wouldn't put opioids near it. Well, one question I see a lot is who can prescribe it. Apparently a lot of general practitioners say they're not allowed to prescribe it, and that's mostly untrue. I don't know about every country, but in a lot of countries I've seen it as untrue. If they wish to learn about it and look into it, they can prescribe it. And if they are willing to take your information or even just Google LDN Research Trust, they will find the information they need. Using off-label medicines is just not new for these conditions. I'm sure these doctors have used things off-label before. So if you've asked your doctor and they say they're not allowed, it means they probably just don't want to look into it and figure it out. So find another doctor who will. There are online doctors, like reputable ones that you can find, but I'd start with LDN Research Trust to look up the information there, and they can put you in contact with people who prescribe it. And again, I have lots of videos, blog posts, whatever, to help you with it. But to conclude, for my 7-year update, I'm still so thankful. I'm still on it. I will not be going off it. I hope I've presented a balanced kind of case for you, but I think it's worth it. I really do. Like, nothing else I've ever tried has helped me that much. And when you put it together with all my like other stuff, like if you put the LDN with the, the fact that I have my yoga nidra rest breaks, my pacing, all my sleep hygiene, the co-typing, which helps me sleep, which another story I may have to go off, but all these things that I do, the gentle movement, the yoga, the breathing, whatever, everything put together, the LDN is like a foundation. Like, it is a thing that I cannot go off, and really, really changed the game for me. So I think it's worth researching for yourself. So I really hope that you will look into it. If you have any questions, put them below. I'll put a link below to my blog posts and my ebook, and if there's anything that I've forgotten that you really want to know, then yeah, put the question below. And if you've got some experience with LDN, please do share below so that other people can see too.